This is RiverTalks with Jonathan Brush, President and CEO of Unbound.
I was recently speaking at our base camp event for Unbound, and I had a series of slides, and I put one up, and it was a pile of lumber. So you were looking at sort of the side of this pile of lumber, and I asked people what it was. And of course, I got the immediate obvious answer. So it's lumber, it's a stack of boards. And I said, no, I said, actually, this pile of lumber is failed trees. And so people laughed a little bit. And I said, it's not a tree anymore. It's a tree that was cut down. It's no longer living. It was processed, cut up. But then the next picture I showed a beautiful table that somebody had crafted. And I said, look at the redemption of these boards. This failed tree turned into this beautiful table. And so I showed the next picture, and it was a pile of flour. And I said, what is this? And as a testament to the kinds of students that we have in the program, immediately everybody said it's failed wheat. And I said, correct. This is wheat that has been cut down. It's not growing anymore. It was crushed, and it was turned into flour. And then the next picture was a loaf of bread. And so the failed wheat turns into flour. And then the next picture was next slide was a picture of a bunch of people. And in fact, people that I was speaking to, people that were actually there. And I said, what's this? And everybody kind of laughed and moaned a little bit and said, yeah, it's failed people. And then the question is, what comes after that? Because if failed trees can turn into tables and crafted furniture and beautiful things, and failed wheat can turn into bread, there's this interesting reality in the world that we can see as a pattern everywhere, that, there is failure that ultimately leads to greater redemption and greater success and greater things. That something has to almost completely stop in what it was doing in order for it to fulfill something bigger. Now, from a Christian perspective, and for the presentation that I gave, the next slide was a picture of a graveyard. And that doesn't look like an immediate following when you say, well, there's failed people, and then, flour becomes bread and boards become tables, and then you see a picture of a graveyard. What is that? Well, from a Christian perspective, it's the reality of our life, that ultimately we're all going to, we're made of dust, and to dust we are to return. And it is that return to dust that we experience our ultimate redemption, that we travel into eternity, and that ultimately we live in a new heaven and a new earth and a new reality. But it is, in order for that new reality to come, the old has to pass away. Now, what I find interesting, and I don't fully understand, but I want to share with all of you to sort of think about a little bit here, is that reality seems to be built into that fact, that sort of process seems to be built into the very fabric of reality. Everywhere you look, there are things that have to fail at what they're doing in order to be redeemed to do something bigger or grander. One of the students actually came to me afterwards and she said, are those really failed trees? How do you know that wasn't actually the purpose for the tree? We could argue that the purpose for the tree was to become that table, that in becoming the table, it served a bigger and a greater purpose than it did standing as a tree. I think that's an excellent point. I think that there's a real argument to be made there. I think the grander point is this, is that if that's the case, then what we're really saying is that the big thing that we're looking towards is redemption. When something fails and then some other power makes it more and greater than it was before. The tree fails to become a tree and the craftsman turns it into a table. The wheat fails to becoming wheat, becomes flour, and the chef turns it into bread. As people, we ultimately die and we succumb and we return to dust. And the one who made us redeems us and makes us more than we ever were before. So at that level, I argued at base camp that redemption is the very foundation for reality. But if that's true, then there's this interesting point that failure is necessary for redemption. And so what does that look like on a micro scale in your life right now? How does that change your perspective of failure? At some level, in order to become more than what you are right now, in order to do more than you can do right now, in order to understand more than you understand right now, in order to redeem that which you have been given, you're going to have to fail.